Hello, everyone. I'm Ray Sanders, and you're listening to the Ray Sanders Leadership Podcast. I have a few questions for you today. Have you started wondering where in the world society is heading? Did you ever think things would end up the way they are? Do you find yourself dreaming about the good old days? If you're like a lot of folks, you're starting to be concerned with how much things have changed. Is there anything we can do about it? Well, stick around, and as we unpack some answers, you might just discover a few things that'll rock your world. Hello, everyone. I'm Ray Sanders, and you're listening to the Ray Sanders Leadership Podcast. Well, look who's here. It's you. You're here. Hey, thanks for joining me today on the Ray Sanders Leadership Podcast. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world today, and I want to jump in and take a look at where things stand. A lot has changed in the last few years, and dare I say decades. Wow, how things have changed over the last few decades. Like it or not, things are different than they used to be. Things can change in an instant. Things can change in a moment. Things can turn around right on a dime. What a difference one day can make from the next. And some of you are screaming, please, please, bring back the good old days. You know what? Let's be honest. The good old days, they were real. You know why I know? I'll tell you why I know. I lived them. There was a window of time, at least in America, when things may not have been perfect, but man, in many ways, things had certainly never been better. For my generation, those born around 1960 or thereafter, things had truly never been better. Our parents and grandparents had lived through wars, tough economic times, and social injustice. But as kids, we didn't know about it. We didn't know what all was going on. All I remember is riding up and down my street, no helmet, no shirt, no shoes, on my bicycle, wind in my hair. Yes, those were the days when I had some hair. Up and down the street, I'd leave and come back whenever I wanted. My mom and dad, they didn't know where I was at. It really sounds like the best life ever. Growing up as a kid, my generation reaped the benefits of all the hard work and sacrifice our families had made. And those sacrifices were real. As a kid, for me, life was good, peaceful, safe, and comfortable. I would love to think that that's the world my kids grew up in and are growing up in, and my kids' kids would grow up in. The world wasn't perfect. Really, by no stretch of the imagination, it wasn't perfect. But I dare say it was better than it had ever been before. Ever before. We were blessed. So what happened? Well, I'll leave that one up for the history books. There's a lot we could go into on this program today, and we could point fingers, and we can talk politics, and we can talk about a lot of things. But history will tell us what happened, I think. But here's what I do know. It isn't realistic to live in the past. That was then, and this is now. Each of us plays a role in our modern reality. We can watch from the sidelines, we can point fingers, and complain about the way things are, or like the people that lived before the good old days, we can do our part to make tomorrow better than today. Are times the best they've ever been? Let's be honest. In many ways, things are in fact much better than the good old days. Modern medicine, technology, paved roads, air conditioning, counseling, all of these things. Some things that were taboo are no longer taboo, and we can talk about it. There's a lot more freedom in society in so many ways. Yeah, things have gotten worse in a lot of ways, but things have gotten better too. Is there still room for improvement? Yeah, surely. Surely there are more good times to come. Even better days. We can hope for the best, or we can sit on our hands and rest. Let me say that again. We can hope for the best, or we can sit on our hands and rest. Will things get worse before they get better? Man, possibly. But you know what? If each of us will take responsibility for making things better where we plant our feet, the exponential impact of our collective efforts is certain to make things better than before. It will take all of us. There's no room for spectators, no spectators allowed. Making the good old days a reality for today will require good old everyday people, people like you and me, not the government, not the politicians, not our leaders, not our bosses. No, everyday, good, hard-working people like you and me, doing good old everyday things every day in order to make the good old days, days like today. What do you say? Let's make today the good old days of tomorrow. Things may not be looking all that great at the moment, but if you and I don't step up and step out, nothing will ever change. Find your voice. Find your strength. Find a way to make a difference. Be the change that has the potential. Be the change that has the potential to make today the good old days. Well, that pretty much does it for today's podcast. I hope I've given you something to think about. If you like what you've heard, by all means, please share the Ray Sanders Leadership Podcast with a friend. And by all means, like, download, and subscribe to the show today. Don't miss all the great leadership resources available at raysanders.com. We'd love to share those with you, and I think you'll find them very useful. Just go to raysanders.com. That's going to do it for today's podcast, and I want you to remember, we're in your corner for life and work.